Welcome. This is 93 Phoenix, the podcast. My name is ChilWill Keller, and we are back with another one. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Our first podcast, Discernment and Truth Discovery, is a great first podcast, and then the one we're doing currently is a good segue. So if you haven't checked that out, go back, 93 Phoenix, check out the podcast, and we'll jump right in here. Today, I got my co-host, Blake Flaherty. How you doing, brother?
Good.
And we have a very special guest, Kelly Neill. How you doing, Kelly?
Hello. I'm fine, thank you.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Blake. How are you?
Good.
I have to tell you how grateful I am for this opportunity, and also that I love what you're doing. I had an opportunity to listen to your podcast, the one specifically about how to discuss and disseminate information about our shared reality right now. And it was so good that I listened to it twice in its entirety in one day. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
That truly means a lot. Really, we appreciate that. This is what it's all about, is discovering truth, getting that information out there, and hopefully people take the time and attention to educate themselves and question things. So I appreciate those kind words. And again, I couldn't do this without Blake. He's my partner in this, and it's going great, man. And I'm glad to share this adventure with him, and we're gonna see where it goes. So thank you for those kind words. And moving on, let's dive in. We're gonna get into the current state of affairs going on in the world right now with the virus and the so-called pandemic. So we're going to touch on some of the psychology, some of the causes, and mainly the information that is being censored heavily. So we're going to touch on those. And Kelly, can you give us some background on you, on who you are?
My formal education is in bioengineering and psychology. I am the chair of the American Association of Mind-Body Medicine, which you can find at aambm.com. I'm CTAA certified master hypnotherapist. I'm an associate of the American Board of Neurolinguistic Programming, adjunct faculty at physics and philosophy at OLI. I have a physics blog, theobservereffect.com, which was awarded a Best Science Blog Prize by science.org. I've worked as a journalist, feature writer, columnist, assistant editor, editor-in-chief for several publications, most recently providing content to Reuters. I've worked in radio, and mostly, I am somebody who loves science and research and data crunching. And I would invite anyone who's listening to this to dig into that, because it's something available to all of us. It's beyond politics. And that was not always the case. It is becoming politicized now. That's something I could definitely speak to. And again, that's changing because of censorship and disinformation. So here to learn, Mostly I'm a lover of science and the truth, and getting past a narrative that is not always truthful for whatever reasons. And what those reasons may be are beyond my pay grade. But I can tell you that there's stuff going on that's not in alignment with truth and with science. So
excellent.
That's my
that's
my background.
Woo!
I like how Kelly, when
Beautiful.
you were talking about your credentials, you ended it on talking about false narratives, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the crux of it.
I mean, I can talk about, I guess where my thing is, as far as this is concerned, would be about the actual science, the actual data, versus the corporate media narrative, versus how the government is behaving. And these things don't align. And that's problematic to me, just from a strictly science perspective. It's not even about politics or what the bigger picture is, or whether there's a deep state involved, or if it's Trump's fault or Pelosi's fault or Newsom's fault, or whose ever fault. What I'm saying, and what I can directly address, very factually, is that there is science here that is being ignored and censored and suppressed, that you would think would be good news, and yet we're not getting that good news. Here in California, we're being told, hey, we're going to be locked down till, the end of July, maybe longer. Hey, we're going to be locked down till the fall, maybe longer, limited reopenings based on certain criteria that is almost impossible to meet, based on the criteria that is given to, medical institutions for how they consider what is and what is not COVID. I mean, there's presumed cases, there's actual cases, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on, not only in the government but also among the corporate media that doesn't align with the actual statistics and data. So that's problematic to me, and that's something that I could directly address. So initially, we have to look back. I mean, historically, being just a matter of weeks, that feels like years. Seriously, the Imperial College initial data. So there's a guy named Neil Ferguson. He's an infectious disease modeler at Imperial College in London. They talk about him in very esteemed terms. He doesn't have a very good track record with being a great modeler. However, he did put out an in-house paper. It was never intended to dictate policy. It was never intended to leave Imperial College. Somehow it was leaked. And he first postulated that COVID would kill 500,000 people in the UK alone. And again, this was supposed to be in-house. Somehow it got leaked, and the UK, US, and ultimately, the rest of the world ended up using this data to initiate their particular policies with regard to controlling COVID. So the paper got leaked, and we were off and running. Segue to late March, when he revised his postulate to a death rate of 20,000, which reflected an initial error of 96%. So that's 96% fewer deaths, which would make it look like a typical flu season. So he made that revision, and that was huge. And I thought, boy, we're going to get back on track now. Once Governor Newsom and other governors hear about this, they're absolutely going to readjust the way that they're rolling things out in terms of lockdowns, shutdowns, et cetera. It was huge, and it was pretty much ignored by the news media. Some alternative media picked it up, and then he had to make some sort of an apology. I did, make that revision, but I don't know what exactly you are interpreting that to mean. But I think there's a reason why, in terms of psychology, that I'll get to later, why this still sticks with people in spite of the downward revision, that we're still sticking with this initial projection that was so horrific. And initially it was a very horrific projection. Obviously, you're talking about 500,000 people that was later, revised downward to 20,000 people in the UK. So in the meantime, during that time, other data started emerging. There were studies from Stanford, LA, New York, Iceland, one in China, in which large groups of the general public were tested for antibodies. And the findings of those were higher infection rates, fewer cases with symptoms, and extrapolated from that, lower death rates. That did start to make the news cycle before that was dismissed and even derided. And it was very interesting to watch that happen as a political maneuver. The scientist at Stanford who led the Santa Clara study was accused of being, and therefore his numbers were wrong. Well, it turned out he was off by like 0.1%, and it didn't change what his projections and his data showed. So the first study on those seroprevalence it was actually in China. It showed that half of those tested had no symptoms. Another 31% had mild symptoms. The study in Iceland reported that about half of those infected had no symptoms, and almost everyone else had mild symptoms. And it would be good news, right? Except that these valid findings were ignored or disparaged. They even had experts dogpile on these studies' authors. And, now you have people like CBS busted for running video footage from Italy at the height of their infection rate and trying to pass it off as footage from a New York City hospital. And then, of course, they got popped for that. And then they went ahead and ran it again anyway, after apologizing for it as an editorial error. The New York Times, the venerable New York Times, right? They're skewing data to create a graph, many graphs actually, that would scare the hell out of anyone who isn't used to working with data. They're using tricks of time series. They're using data dumps from counties who don't always report their daily tolls, but do it all at once or after a number of days or weeks. And they're using that to scare the hell out of people. There's that Orange County, it was run as an Orange County beach photo. It was actually from Florida spring break several years earlier in the media. I know.
Wow.
And
That's
I know.
crazy.
And it's crazy.
It's amazing that this stuff happens. And, I think a lot of people would think, oh, well, if they got caught with their pants down like that, then we would know about it, right? So
we do know
report.
about it, and somehow that still gets swept aside. And I'm not sure why. CBS came out and apologized. Oh, we had an editing mistake, but ran the footage again. Okay. So
Right.
that's one of those weird things. Somebody else was making an excuse for the media outlets that ran the supposedly Orange County photo, which was actually Florida spring break from several years ago. And by the way, that photo and that reporting supposedly is what led California Governor Newsom to reimpose a beach ban in Orange County. So in other words, false reporting influencing government policy on that case. And there's more. I mean, there's,
and you're seeing this all the time as well, right? They release something fake, they pull it back, and they'll say, oh yeah, we retracted that. But how many people actually see the retraction?
Nobody sees the retractions. And I can get
how many people
get
see
to
the initial
psychology
report?
of that in a minute. I'll get to the psychology of that in a minute, because psychology is one of my favorite subjects. But also the censorship of those doctors who, that press conference, it was a legitimate news organization, legitimate mainstream news organization, that featured a press conference with two MDs who run the largest COVID testing facility in Central California. They had good news to tell everyone, which was basically, hey, look, we've got cases. People aren't dying at the rate that they're being told. Hey, you should go outside. It's really not healthy to stay indoors. Hey, we've got this. And that was censored on YouTube and on Facebook almost immediately. Like, I think they logged a few million views in, and then that was kicked off. And again, I mean, this virus has actually killed 0.02% of the population. And those numbers are based on CDC issued, statistics that I just pulled up earlier today, actually. Let's see where I wrote that down. I wrote that down somewhere. And the other part of this too is 66% of new cases are now among stay-at-homes. That's according to Cuomo. He was shocked at those findings. So, and I'm not surprised. I mean, there's a vitamin D.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah,
that's
it's pretty scary.
I mean, that's hello.
Yeah, and and again, when Birx is calling the CDC out, saying, "Hey, I don't know what to believe," there was a really interesting paper put out in the British Medical Journal a few years back about how the CDC inflates influenza statistics, and that's worth a DuckDuckGo and a read if you want to find it.
Yep.
Just
so
about
they're going back and changing those statistics as well now, aren't they?
Sure. I mean, I've seen history rewritten about how the Black Death, the bubonic plague, actually ended. I mean, that there's things that are happening right now that are just amazing in terms of the control and changing of information.
It's amazing that they're able to scrub things from the internet at all.
But they do.
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? Isn't it? I wanted to talk about the two doctors that you brought up, because obviously that was a very, very big, viral video. A lot of people were sharing it, and I honestly, I shared the video as well, and there was people that were, the only argument that I could see, there was one argument that was, these guys have some sort of shady past, that they're
I didn't even hear that.
straw man, like I didn't even bother looking into it. I should have, just so I could have just like shut them down. But it was a straw man argument. And then I brought up the point of, if these doctors are full of shit, if they're not correct in what they're reporting, they could very easily lose their license to practice medicine,
there's something
right?
There's something else here. There's something else here, though. There's something else. It's called Nelsonian inference. And basically, there was an Admiral Nelson years ago, and he got the signals from afar while on a ship at war to cease fire and retreat. And he deliberately would move his vision to wherever the signal was not coming from. I don't see it. So here's the question. I mean, the real question should be this: if indeed these guys are full of shit, let's just put it that way, then why go out of your way to discredit them? Same thing with Judy Mikovits. I mean, if these people are really so discredited and so easily dismissed, why censor them?
Right.
See, that's the part that doesn't make sense. That is deliberate cognitive ignorance. And the fact that you're trying to remove that from the narrative tells me that, wow, nothing to see here, but maybe there is. Why is it so important, if it's so easily dismissed, to take it off of the narrative so that it's not even
absolutely?
You're framing a context in a specific way, and that's what the news media does. That's what the news media does.
Well, and I want to take the opportunity to tell people, this. Anytime you see the media saying, trying to censor something, or to, basically telling you not to look at things. It was the same thing with the Pizzagate, right?
Sure.
They said if you looked at the emails, you were actually violating the law, right? Which is bullshit. It's not true, right? If you actually looked at the emails, Podesta's emails or whatever, that you were actually violating the Constitution, So they're trying to scare you into not looking. So definitely fucking look at it.
Right. No, and again,
anytime they tell you not to look at something, look at it.
No, it's a misdirect, obviously. And for the news media, I mean, here's the thing. What we've gotten from a science perspective, really good news, actually. I mean, and the good news, I mean, fundamentally is COVID is far more widespread, far less lethal than what the news media had been saying. And it seems to be an unacceptable change to their narrative. And understandably, I mean, if you go back, there was a guy, Noam Chomsky. He's a linguist. He's brilliant. He wrote a book, and there was a follow-up film called Manufacturing Consent. And this was back in the 80s. The film came out in the early 90s. It discussed the 5 filters of propaganda by mainstream media. And right now, it's straight out of that playbook. It is straight out. I mean, you've got like size, ownership, and profit orientation of the media. You've got advertising, which is attracting a demographic that advertising likes. And the most desirable here in the U.S. is U.S. aged 25 to 54, predominantly female. Gaining that demographic allows the networks to charge their advertisers more for those spots. So it's a money source. You've got number 3, which is sourcing news, and news outlets typically align with powerful information sources, that is government and their advertisers or corporate interests. The 4th one, which this applies here, which is called FLAC, and that is dismantling, if not destroying, narratives that don't agree with or that run counter to the predominant narrative, because they're picking the framework, and by limiting the discussion, who can participate and what questions can be asked, they control the narrative. And then the 5th one, and this is the one that freaks me out the most, mostly because of how this has been going down just in recent months, the ideology of war. So, initially it was a war on communism, then there was a war on terror, there's a war on drugs, and now there's a war on COVID. And when you do that, you're sucking people in. It's very important, that last one, because of how our brains work.
The invisible enemy.
Right. So they have this information framework. I mean, this narrative, and boom, super ratings. Variety did a recent article on viewership for all 3 major news networks, and it has soared since the word pandemic was put into play. For background, all 3 had seen that coveted 25 to 54 age demographic slip away over the last 15 to 20 years, and suddenly CNN has 179% increase in that demographic. People are at home. They want to know what's going on. They're afraid. They're tuning in. CNN has not had numbers like this since 2005. MSNBC hasn't had so many viewers since 2003. So it was like around the time of the Iraq War. That was the last time people were watching like they are. Fox has 2 shows that are killing it with that demographic. So, all of this, I mean, means substantially increased revenue for these networks. So they're not going to let this go. And why would they? So you have to wonder, like, how did this happen? That so many people are being disinformed or underinformed? That's a part of it. But I mean, it happens because the news media also follows like a Hegelian principle of problem, reaction, solution. It happens because consensus building makes people feel safe, even if the consensus is bullshit. I mean, and consensus is the business of politics and sociological devices. It's not science. And the science is pointing to something else. And that's being completely ignored. That we're all in this together feels safe. But, ask Galileo about consensus, ask Tesla about consensus. Real science explores. It doesn't need consensus to be true. So there's real science that exists, real data, real numbers, and it doesn't play out on the mainstream media. And that is problematic because most people, that's where they're getting their information. Again, this is why I appreciate the fact that you guys did that, the podcast on how to communicate to people, because they are being inundated with a fear narrative, and that works psychologically on people at a very, very deep level,
And that's what it comes down to, is the psychology, right? These
right.
major think tanks, they know how to manipulate and to
yes.
suck people in and get, it almost feels like a reality show's going on right now, and people are just glued to it.
we've been trained for this in a sense for many years via tech. But
exactly.
yeah, the psychology, they understand human psychology. They understand that the human brain, like other animal brains, is wired to attune to threats, record them, and save them for future reference. And this is why, you know, you get something like that first horrible projection out of Imperial College, and that's what sticks in people's brains. So I mean, and that fear response, anxiety, it's not a disease. It's actually, it's great when there's a bear outside your cave. Our predecessors who didn't have that ability to lock in on potential threats, they didn't survive to reproduce. So it's an evolutionary advantage being used against us. The hindbrain, the part responsible for emotions and pursuant reactions, is triggered by that bear, and it sends that information to the forebrain, the thinking part of the brain, to make sense of it. So when we seek information, often we rationalize our fear, even when unfounded, via the information we seek. It's, you know, confirmation bias, and that keeps us safe. And I put that in quotes. But, you know, what happens when that bear turns out to be a shadow? And we're sure we saw a bear, and we want validation, and the media knows this, and they provide the validation. So it's about, and for them, it's about ratings and money, but for other people, it's about their very survival. And I think that's the sad part, and that's the frightening part, really, because of the sheer power of that media and the sheer numbers of people who are buying in at this point.
And what about the ego? I mean, and obviously the ego plays a part in the kind of victim mentality, but also with, you know, you may have people that actually, you know, in some way they grasp what's going on, and they're, you know, part of them is saying, okay, this actually doesn't make sense, but then they kind of just double down because that's just what they've been saying.
Right. I
And
don't know that it's ego. I don't know that it's ego as much as justification of a narrative. Okay, again, they've recorded this fear response. Their forebrain has rationalized it to mean a certain thing. You take that away from people and you're robbing them. Now they don't know what to make of that fear that they were initially handed. And that's problematic. And I'm not sure how that gets fixed. And the other part of the problem with this too is, you know, the news media, the government, they're keeping it very direct and simple. You know, they're creating the context, they're limiting the talking points. And in fact, I mean, when you argue with people, you start to see that they are stuck in a particular way of looking at this. They can't get outside of that. And that's because that's the context that has been handed to them. The dissenters, on the other hand, come from so many different angles, you know, from political angles, from anti-vax angles, from, you know, biblical angles, from so many different places, intellectually and emotionally, that we sound discordant by comparison. So a lot of what, you know, we say gets dismissed as so much noise. And then when you start censoring people, you know, that straw man, that ad hominem argument of this person's been discredited, this is false news, whatever. And people hear that, it works on the consensus level. They're already a part of that consensus, you know. But this is why I think leaning into science is really important. You know, I would hope that raw data is something everybody can agree upon. Apparently, it's being twisted in some places, but if you have the ability or even the willingness to learn how to look at some of this stuff, you're going to say, hey, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, something seriously wrong, and it's not a virus, okay? There's something wrong with the math. There's something wrong with how this is being, how the information is being twisted and delivered to the American public and the world public. I was talking on the phone with my cousin earlier today. She said something really interesting to me. She said, when was the last time the world agreed on anything? You know, it's like, wow, good point. That's crazy. You know, somehow there's this consensus that's being built. So I guess the question is, how do you get people to so much as peer beyond that cave door when they're utterly convinced that there's a bear out there? You know it's a shadow. I know it's a shadow. How do you get people to the point where they're even willing to question what they've been, you know, basically fed for, and think, I mean, they're at home, they're watching TV, they're afraid, I want information. And they're going to go to the station that feeds their previous biases, you know? So there becomes a political angle in this too. But, you know, I'm concerned about the censorship of doctors, of epidemiologists, and other people with dissenting perspectives. And there's a number of them out there, and they just keep getting chopped, you know, they're not allowed in the conversation. And I think that's creepy.
Maybe we can touch on some of the info that's being censored that people should know is out there. Kind of give them a you know, a trail that they can start investigating for themselves. Like, we know doctors are being censored. Is there anything you want to add to that or say? Like some of the good.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, some of the things I've already mentioned, obviously. here's the thing. Again, I would say, if this person who's delivering this information is so quote unquote discredited, if the information is so entirely wrong and absurd, why censor it?
True. Yeah.
That's my, I guess that's a primary point I would make on that. It should be obvious, or we should give people the right to discern for themselves. That right's being slowly taken away, along with the rights to go outside, without a face covering, go to a store, whatever. And so that stuff is very concerning to me.
Yeah, people need to look at the bigger picture as well, right? With the censorship and our rights being taken away, they're constantly in that fight or flight. All they want is safety and protection, and they're not taking that step back and seeing the other stuff that's going on.
Right. Well, and I'll give you a good
receptive
example of that. If you look at the CDC website, you look at causes of death in the U.S. Accidents kill 160,000 plus people a year. If you take the same time frame, and we now know via some autopsy data that COVID-19 has been with us since probably late last year, so we can say 6 months safely, November to May. You can say that safely that, and they're saying like 80,000 people have died. And again, that may be an inflated number. Some doctors think inflated as much as 25% because of the CDC guidelines to basically list people have dying with COVID as much as dying of COVID. So in other words, you come in
getting hit by a car,
and did you have a fever and cough?
COVID.
You got COVID, baby.
Yeah.
So that's problematic, obviously. But so you're looking at that kind of information, but at the same time you've got furloughs and layoffs across the country because non-essential hospital procedures have been cut
Canceled.
off. Yeah. So you've got people who aren't getting cancer treatments, heart surgeries, etc. And you have to wonder about the real numbers. So when people tell me, "Oh, I'm wearing a mask, I'm staying at home because I care about others," I would say to them, "Do you care about others in the context of a Grand Depression of joblessness and hunger and homelessness does to people, of the people who are dying unnecessarily because these essential procedures were deemed non-essential, of the increases in child abuse, spousal abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, suicides? Does that count into your, again, with a disease that literally by the CDC statistics has killed 0.02% of us? That's on par with the car accidents, by the way. So maybe we should close down the freeways.
Yeah, for sure. People have tunnel vision, right? They're just glued to their TVs.
Right. So and that's the other thing, the hyper focus on this, scary. Why? And I don't know the answer to that. I actually don't. It's out of my pay grade to know the answer to that. I have my suspicions. But that's a whole nother phone call.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to know, right? That's, you put a few articles out there, you put some statements out there, and everybody's like, okay, so you tell me, Mr. Smarty Pants, what's the plan? What are they doing? It's like, I'm not saying I know everything. This is I'm just pointing at some very obvious differences in what is being said and what is actually real.
Right. And that's key. That's elemental to this. I mean, you really do need to look at what's real and the real number.
Yeah.
And
I mean, none of us know exactly what's going on. Is that going to stop us from trying to know? Is that going to stop us from wanting to wrap our head around whatever's going on? I mean, of course not.
No, it can't. I mean, it can't.
Yeah. People have been conditioned and trained for so long, usually the wars and stuff are out of the country. Now you have a threat that's right at their doorstep.
Sure.
And most people aren't ready to deal with that. So they just, fetal position and they shut down their cognitive ability. So yeah, and the stress levels go up, right? The cortisol. So, probably one of the best things people can do is almost turn off their TV. And
oh my God, if I could call for one thing right now, besides looking into science, looking into raw data, it would be media distancing. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yep, that's exactly what I mean. Yep. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, unless you are someone who is really trying to get to something, and you're unless you have the skills to kind of navigate the choppy media waters,
Right.
um, you know, definitely, if you're unaware of the tactics being used to manipulate you, then
And again, they are Hegelian tactics. And this isn't new. I
yeah,
mean, it's always been problem, reaction, solution. This is like,
Absolutely.
here's what's going on. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll get back and tell you how to do this.
Yep. Yep, for
And they
sure.
never do. They never do. They just keep telling you more stuff to be very afraid of. So
right.
this is not a new strategy. I think what's new is the depth and breadth of what's going on right now.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. It's a big ask of these guys.
yeah.
They really bit off a big old chunk from everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was just thinking yesterday, this is obviously a very horrible thing going on, and there's a lot of people suffering right now and people dying. One silver lining that I feel we can take, or possibly can take from this, is it just might be a big enough overstep to really get, I mean, everyone has all the time in the world right now, or has had all the time in the world, and some people still do, to not only look into this, but look into themselves, and to take care of whatever family stuff, or personal stuff, or cleaning out your garage. um, so you know even though, and this is, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a conspiracy, and the people that are waging this war, they had all these plans to disable us, and to take away our ability to live and be happy. But I don't think that they were expecting us to kind of take advantage of the way that we are. I mean, I'm coming together with people. I mean, I have friends that I haven't talked to in years that are kind of hitting me up out of nowhere, and I have family that is hitting me up out of nowhere. And so you're seeing this kind of uh, shift um,
I
amongst the
think you are for
people.
some people, but I also know that, the LA suicide hotlines have had an 800% increase in calls.
Absolutely. I mean,
So it
yes,
depends on,
yes,
I think about my friends
yes.
who are single, living alone, without roommates, etc. And this is not an easy time for a lot of people. And
It's not. I'm not trying to water down anything that's happening, and definitely there's going to be the contrast, right? There's going to
sure.
be there's a lot of bad stuff going on,
No,
and I
there is
guess what I'm
there are ways though to touch base with a real reality that's beyond the reality that we've been handed for decades, or
well, it's an opportunity right now.
right,
I mean,
exactly. There are
I
opportunities.
really, I mean, we have the fire. I like, you know, up until now, I've shared little stuff here and there, and definitely when big things come out that no one's talking about, I would mention. But for the most part, I was kind of, I had a life to live. I was tired of alienating myself by sharing all these things and people just not liking me. You know, now I'm at this point where I don't even care about whatever. If what I'm talking about is too much for you to hear, or too real, and you don't want to be my friend anymore, that sucks. But also, it's game time right now, man. This is real life. These are people's lives. This is the whole world is involved. It's not just 9/11 was a big one, but that was America. This is the whole world. So
Although some countries are
yeah.
doing a hell of a lot better of a job than
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I'd love to be in Sweden right now.
Oh, right.
Yeah, America pulled it right out of China's playbook, right? They just followed what China did.
I have to say though that there are some states here, like Georgia, for instance, started gradually reopening about 2 weeks ago, and there were these dire predictions in the national press. Oh, it's going to be horrible. We're going to have this horrible uptick. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And that's the other thing I would bring up too, is not one, and I can say this with authority, not one of the projections, the dire projections that have come out have been correct. Not a single one. And yet
not even close. Not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close.
We glob onto this, and here's again why. Our hindbrains are wired to identify threats, remember them, record them diligently, and then send them up to the forebrain for rationalization and for validation. The problem that I'm seeing right now is we're getting validation from a media that will not let this go, from a government, some states more than others, that will not let this go. I mean, they can't. They can't. They've got so much juice out of this, so much either ratings or power. I mean, I think about some of these people in government. Nobody knew who their names were before this. Truly, I would venture to say that a large majority of their constituents did not know who these people were, and now suddenly they're in front of the cameras every day, woohoo, telling everybody where they can go, how they can go there, you know, whether or not they can go at all. Do they want to give up that power? And
I'll tell them where they can go.
This is just human nature. No, right? Thank you. But human nature, do they want to let this go? You know, I'm pretty sure that people like Newsom and Cuomo are looking at a presidential bid in 4 years.
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, they definitely have something nice waiting for them. I mean, it's you know, people talk about the deep state. If there is a deep state, Cuomo and Newsom they're in it. I mean, it was like you were saying earlier, Kelly, when you know, there's been plenty of good news that's been coming up. It's not being shown on the news, but there's been plenty of good news that has come up. And like you said, you know, you see it come out, and surely now Newsom's,
I know,
his tone is going to change. Surely he's going to say, he's going to announce this.
I got to tell you,
and they keep double downing on the bullshit. They just keep.
I am the kid who sees a room full of horse shit and I'm digging for the pony. So every time something happy happens, I'm like, okay, where's the pony? The pony's not there. What? You know?
It's my birthday.
Where's the pony?
Where is it?
Yeah, it's a hell of a time. And I think people need to take a step back and kind of look within themselves and start asking themselves the big questions about reality and where they get their information from and the validity of it. And you know, government and the mainstream media, you know, they have agendas, and they're not there to help you. They're not your friends. And that's hard for people to think about, right? You start getting conspiracy theorists thrown in. And if you're not a conspiracy theorist, then you must be a coincidence theorist. But it's definitely a good time to do the inner work.
I gotta tell you, sometimes lately, not so much, but at least for the last few weeks, I was on the fence about this. And I'm thinking, well, it's a great opportunity for the news media, great opportunity for politicians who want to further their careers to blow this thing all out of proportion, which is, I believe, what has happened. I mean, just based on the data. When the first projections came out, I thought, oh, crap, this looks pretty bad. And then I started looking at things. And then the second projection, again, 96% downward revision. I'm thinking, it's not so bad. Why haven't things changed? Seroprevalence studies. Why haven't things changed? Why are we still abiding by this weird narrative of, oh my God, you know, we're all going to die, when that's not true? It's simply not true.
Right.
But, you know, you hit people with that particular fear of death, and that's a big one. That's the bear at the cave door.
That's the biggest, right?
But, you know, I mean, today on Facebook, it was interesting. An old friend, actually somebody that I've known for years and years, said, well, yeah, but I'm going to abide by, you know, the guidelines to protect people that I love just in case. So it's one of those just in case. And I think we see a lot of compliance because of that. But I also think that were people to actually wake up a little bit and start questioning a little bit more, it wouldn't even take 20%. I remember reading years ago, something 11% of the population can flip a consensus. You have to remember, most Americans used to think slavery was a good idea, or that women's suffrage was a bad idea. So there's a point at which 11%, a very small percent of the population, flipped everything over on its head, and really just reaching the people who are amenable to new information, who are open to interpreting new data, to rearranging their fear into something that's more constructive, those people could actually change what's occurring right now. I really believe that. It can't fix what's already been broken by the actions taken, but it could absolutely set a future course that might even be more beautiful, you know?
For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Kelly.
That's a great
I'm
point. It's time to take charge. People really need to get involved, and that's an excellent point. We have that opportunity to kind of redirect the future timeline.
Yes.
It's interesting. I've noticed, when this thing first started, when this thing first surfaced, and a lot of people sharing information, and the CNNs and the Foxes and all this stuff sharing. I'm starting to notice that those shares are getting a lot less attention.
Sure.
I'm noting. People are getting bored. I mean, I think they're really just getting bored,
well,
because
here's the thing. And by the way, I know 4 people who have tested positive for COVID. One was sick. One was actually very sick. But she only got sick after she found out she tested positive. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not saying she wasn't sick, but I'm saying that perhaps the introduction of that element, given the information that she was handed at the time, might have somehow had some sort of an influence on how she behaves physiologically. And there's a whole background to that too, how the brain influences the body. But she was on the mend, and then suddenly decided she could go get tested. So she did. And it was interesting what transpired after that. But my point is this: when we don't see people dropping dead around us, when they were wrong, when our lives are being more impacted by you've got a third of people in the U.S. who didn't pay rent in April. A third. That's a huge number of people who didn't pay rent or mortgages. When that's happening in the air, and people don't see people dropping dead around them, they're going to start to question. And I would hope that they would maintain that questioning attitude and start turning off their TVs and maybe looking into things for themselves a little bit more,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, it's all the things you just brought up. I think it's naive to think that the leaders, the so-called leaders, whether you consider those to be, political or businessmen or doctors, whatever.
The experts.
It's naive.
Put that in quotes. The experts.
It's not the experts, right? The experts with a Z at the end. It's silly to think that these guys wouldn't know that this would happen. That we would have a rise in suicide. That we would have we're at what 30 million unemployed and rising. I actually just read recently that, or I read today that Australia's suicide rate is now eclipsing the COVID deaths.
Right.
So you and that's compared to last year's figures. It's not just because of suicides; it's more suicides.
Right.
So
may I add to that? I mean, as an addendum to that, prescription psychotropic drug use is way the hell up. People who have never ever thought, "Hey, I need a Xanax," suddenly want Xanax.
They're checking out.
Oh yeah,
they're checking out. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a win. It's a win for big pharma, right?
Oh my God, that and the idea of a vaccine, because of course vaccine makers cannot be sued for damages or deaths. There was I think it was 1986. There was a Supreme Court ruling that basically, drug makers can be sued, but a vaccine is considered a biologic, and you can't sue over a biologic. So here we already have mandated vaccines for kids, right? I can imagine a time when there's a mandated vaccine for coronavirus. Whether or not it actually works is immaterial, because the bottom line is it's mandated. Somebody's paying for it. It's going to come out of the government purse. I don't know where all this money is coming from, by the way. I mean, that's the part.
They're printing it up. They're just printing it up. They're just pumping it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
They're
crazy.
pulling it out of their butts.
Big win for pharma on so many counts. So there's another aspect of this too. So you're having people stay at home. They're exercising less. They're eating more crappy food. They're sitting in front of their TVs. And so now you're going to have vitamin D deficiency. And we already know that suboptimal vitamin D is correlated with, interestingly, the risk factors for coronavirus, which are heart disease, which are high blood pressure, Obesity is another one. You've got suboptimal vitamin D.
So get out in the sun. Get out in the sun, people. Get out there.
Oh my God. It's like, get out and get some sunshine, please.
Spring is here. Spring is here.
I got to tell you, so a couple of weeks ago, sometimes my husband will on CNN and turn off the sound and we'll watch the crawls, because TV is a known hypnagogic. Okay, so you watch 10 to 15 minutes of television and your brain actually goes into an alpha state, at which point it's absorbing whatever's on the screen, which is really interesting, right? So, if you're watching
something delta brainwaves?
No, alpha actually.
Oh, alpha, yeah.
Alpha brainwaves, which is just below beta. So beta is when you're alert and really, things are happening, your brain's functioning. But when you go into alpha, you kind of go into this relaxed state. You become very suggestible, and I know this because I'm certified in hypnotherapy. So you go into this state, and my husband turned on CNN and he's watching the crawls to see what people are being fed, and it said avoid sunbathing. Avoid sunbathing. And I'm thinking,
oh my goodness.
Right. I'm thinking,
wow,
exactly. I'm like, why in the world would that even be a crawl on CNN? What in
was there an explanation for that?
I think it was in response to, I think maybe the night prior or the day prior, our president said something about sunlight killing coronavirus or something like that. It was like, avoid sunbathing.
So they have to say the opposite.
Right. Avoid sunbathing. And so, but again, interestingly, so vitamin D deficiency is one of those things linked to these comorbidities that put you at higher risk. And I'm thinking, why in the world aren't we addressing that? Why are we focused on the virus instead of, why don't we mandate good health? And when I say that, I mean, good diets, exercise, safe sun exposure, good sleep, a good life, living a good life, managing stress appropriately. And instead, we've got a bunch of people really stressed out, staying inside, depleted vitamin D levels. And by the way, suboptimal vitamin D is pretty much a global pandemic in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, definitely.
There's been several papers on this that are really interesting, and those go back several years. So I'm thinking, what are we doing exactly? We're giving people some really bad information. Same thing with the mask wearing. There's been some studies suggesting that you're more prone to, not necessarily coronavirus, although that could be included in this, but other infections by having pathogens that get past the mask, getting trapped in your sinuses and in your mouth. So it's like, why in the world would you do that? Why would you rebreathe carbon dioxide? Look that up. Look up carbon dioxide rebreathing. It's a really crappy plan for optimal health.
And most people are shallow breathers already, right?
Right. I know, and I'm guilty of that, actually. I do have to remind myself.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm an upper chest breather. And every once in a while, I'm like, hey, Kelly, breathe. Well, you need to, once in a while, catch your breath.
Yeah, so don't go jogging with a mask on.
Oh, my gosh. I see this.
I see that all the time.
I saw two women today walking briskly. Okay, we're in an abandoned park. Okay, I'm walking briskly. They're walking briskly, walking past each other. As I come toward them, they're in masks, and I'm thinking, oh damn, they're really making a mistake there. But I'm not going to say anything. As I walk past them, they admonish me for not wearing a mask. One of them, the other one tells me we could call you in. She said to me, you should be wearing a mask. The first one said, we could call you. And I'm thinking, wow, I didn't even respond. I'm thinking, okay, you have hypercapnia, that CO2 overload. You're walking briskly, inhaling your own stuff there. I'm just going to let that one go.
And do you think that's just like one of those like, oh, we have to do this, so you have to too, or maybe they just feel silly, maybe there's a part of them that just
there was a great experiment years ago on social conformity, and it showed people in a hospital waiting room. And what happened was when a bell went off, so they hired a bunch of actors, and they put one person in there who didn't know what was going on, just waiting to see the doctor. They hired a bunch of actors, and they'd set off a bell, and every time the bell went off, everybody in the room would stand up. Well, after they did this like one or two times, this woman started standing up with them. And you can repeat this over and over again. And, so what happens when we don't conform to societal norms? And again, this is the tribal instinct. This is hindbrain survival stuff. You want consensus. And again, there's a corporate narrative, a government narrative that is giving us a consensus. It's very simple. It's very direct. It's on point. Stay home, stay safe. Wear a mask, save lives. The other side, the dissenters, don't have this very simple fear-based narrative. We have this narrative of, hey, you're going to be okay. You're probably going to be okay. You'll probably survive this. You probably won't catch this. If you do, you'll be sick for, a week. Do you want to spend 4 to 6 months in isolation in your house to avoid being sick for a week? How many people would actually choose that?
Yeah. Do you want to go into debt? I know I've gone into debt.
Right. Right. I mean, so at some point, I think, I do think, again, it's spring, it's summer. And again, respiratory viruses, this time of year, they tend to go away. What concerns me is when you have lockdowns, here in California, they're saying, through July, maybe through August. Well, what happens in September, October? The CDC flu starts in October through April. So they're going to give us just enough time to go, hey, look, here it is again. Oh my God. Everybody go back to your homes,
Second wave.
And people haven't gotten all the vitamin D that they should have during all of those sunny days.
I know.
So then they're coming out and they're all pale and they're getting sick again.
No, and this happens among new school teachers. So when they first go into a classroom, beginning of the year, they've been home, whatever, doing whatever. They go to a classroom. There's a bunch of germy kids in there, and they catch everything until their immune systems get brought up to snuff. And that's another part of the mask wearing that I think is counterintuitive from a science perspective. And that is, we need exposure to challenges daily. Other people's germs, other people's pathogens or viruses,
microbes,
or bacteria. Yeah, we need those things to keep our immune system working at full bore. That's what it does. The T cells, the B cells.
Up to date, right? You need updates. You need to get your updates.
Exactly. This is herd immunity, really, fundamentally. I mean, to all against all sorts of things. So you want that, and we're telling people don't get that. And what's interesting about that, again, Cuomo, 66% of the cases in New York are among people who were staying at home. Oops. So why are people like Newsom, governor of California, telling us we're going to stay at home some more? No, it's so illogical. It's not science. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's not science. So that's what scares me, because it isn't science. If you look at the actual, just at face value, if 66% of the new cases are among people who are staying at home, why would you tell people to stay at home? That would represent a 300% increased chance, almost 300%, of contracting COVID by staying at home. Whoa. Why would you do that?
It's always inverted, right? And it's so funny.
It feels inverted. Why? My brain goes, why is this happening?
Yeah. And then they introduce into the House, right? House Resolution 6666.
Oh my gosh.
Are they just they're laughing at us?
I'm in a bad movie at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like the HR 6666, and then there's the patent on the patent on the coronavirus vaccine.
Yeah.
It's also 060606. And I'm not trying to get into any sort of whatever Christian conspiracy theory stuff, but just as a normal person, you kind of gotta laugh at. That's just bizarre.
It's very bizarre. It's bizarre. It's like, are we being toyed with?
Can we all agree that's bizarre?
Are we being toyed with, or do we need exorcists? I don't know.
Do I need to go to church? God damn it.
Right?
Oh man. Wow, great stuff, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I think we've been going a little over an hour. That's awesome. Hopefully, Kelly, we can do this again, because you're phenomenal and the information was amazing.
You're phenomenal, and I so appreciate what you guys are doing again. Amazing, especially that talk about how to talk to people about this, because that's so necessary. And I needed that schooling, because I tend to go in full bore. Hey, wait a minute. And seriously, I watched it twice. The second time, my husband sit down with me. I said, "Hey, you got to watch this podcast. You got to listen to this podcast that Blake and Will did.
Well,
it's just awesome."
You know what? Our powers combined, we are fucking amazing, because you, Kelly, you are a very a highly technical researcher. You're very much more technical than I am. You're willing to go through medical reports and journals, and I will definitely look at that stuff. But you have a certain knack, and you're not afraid to just get into it. So I often share. I told you this before. I have friends that share information with me, and typically I will look through the whole thing and kind of look it over and sit on it, and then maybe share. But typically, whenever you send me something, I mean, sometimes I'll look at the headline and maybe the first paragraph, and I'm just like, yep, that's definitely that's worth sharing.
Here's what it is, Blake. When you're going up against a huge power, a superpower narrative, you cannot afford to make a mistake, because if you do, you'll be utterly dismissed. Everything you say afterwards, they can make mistakes. They can run a fake photo. They can run fake video. They can make graphs that make no sense to any statistician.
Because they have the consensus.
They can do that. You and I don't have that option. We have to be right. We have to be absolutely right and absolutely certain in our numbers. And that's why I love science, because that will give you the ultimate real numbers and the real data. And that is irrefutable. It's not political. It's not religious. It's not philosophical.
There's no feelings attached to it.
There's no feelings attached to it. It's like, it is what it is. It's just data,
Yep.
So unless it's being twisted, which it has been considerably, by, I would say, vested interests, without going into that political aspect of it. But yeah, by vested interests, there's no arguing with it fundamentally. So, that's where I come from, because that's the ultimate argument. You want to fight with me? Come at me with statistics and data that are legitimate, that are sourced, and I'll listen to them. I mean, I'm always open to being upended on stuff. But in this case, it's like, I'm just freaked out right now by how much it's been twisted and distorted to fulfill a particular narrative, to build a consensus that's based on bullshit. For sure.
Wow, that's great, Kelly. Is there a website or anything that you want to say for people to contact you or get more information?
Not in particular. I mean, again,
Okay.
I'm chair of the American Association of Mind Body Medicine. So if you want to go to aambm.com, there's a wealth of resources there for mind body medicine. I have my physics blog at theobservereffect.com. If you're into physics and stuff like that, it doesn't really cover this stuff, but it's definitely it's fun stuff, and the comments are more fun than some of my posts. I will readily admit. I've had the opportunity to talk with and ultimately become friends with some world-class physicists, including a Nobel laureate. It's an awesome place to just hang out and look at stuff. I haven't been posting there as much as I should, but that's a fun place to go. And other than that, I don't have anything. I have no agenda. I have nothing to promote or push. I have no book. I just love truth.
Just the truth.
I love truth and facts.
I want the truth.
I love the truth, man. Yeah, I have no book to sell. I'm not running for office.
Not yet.
Either.
Hey, not yet.
And all you need is the truth, right? And it shall set you free. Well, you guys, that's been a hell of a conversation. I want to thank both of you. Our special guest, Kelly Neill, thank you for your time and attention and your valuable insight.
Thank you, Will.
And Blake Flaherty, my co-host. Appreciate you, brother, always.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And remember, people, get outside, get some vitamin D, get some sun, and fresh oxygen, all right? Be careful of those masks. All right, everybody, this is 93 Phoenix, the podcast, signing off. Gia.